Hi guys, so we are solving March 2018. Variant is 3, paper is 3 and variant is 2. The first question is about the cost-benefit analysis, and they say in cost-benefit analysis, the term net social benefit refers to, and the answer is social benefit minus social cost. What is social benefit? Social benefit includes private benefit plus external benefit, and what is social cost? It's private cost plus external cost. So when you find net social benefit, we subtract all the benefits, which is social, which is private and external, with all the social cost, which is private cost plus external cost. In the second question, this says the government school is built by private builders in a residential neighborhood. The builders ignore the effects of noise and disturbance. Why does a free market fail to take into account these external costs of building the school? And basically the answer is D, because these costs are not paid by the builders. These are external costs or negative externality, which is borne by the third party, but it is not paid by the parties which are causing this transaction to happen. So that's why a builder will ignore these third party costs, and that's why these are the costs which are not paid by the builders. In the third question, they say in all market structures, what must firm equate to ensure allocative efficiency? The answer is C. Well, we know this. For allocative efficiency, the condition is price equals to marginal cost. Now, price is actually AR. Why? Because AR is simply total revenue divided by quantity, right? So total revenue is price times quantity over quantity. So we get the Q cancelled. So AR is simply price. So this can be also written as AR is equal to MC, and that's why what must firms equate to ensure allocative efficiency? And the answer is marginal cost and average revenue, which is simply saying marginal cost and price. Question 4 is about budget line. In this diagram, the consumer's budget line is shifting from JK to GH. You can see you can now buy more of X while buy less of Y. Also, this is a non-parallel shift, which means there is a change in the slope of the budget line. Slope of the budget line is simply Px over Py. So the ratio of Px to Py is changing. Since we can buy more of X and less of Y, as can be seen from the budget line, we can say X is becoming relatively cheaper than Y, and that's, in other words, answer C would be right, which says good Y has become relatively more expensive, or good as X has become relatively cheaper. In 5, they gave us a table, and they're asking us about income and substitution effect. So this is that the table shows substitution and income effect for a normal good and for inferior good as the price of the good changes. Which combination is correct? Well, we know this when the price of a good goes down, and if the good is normal, we know the substitution effect is buy more. The quantity, buy more means quantity is going up, which means it's a positive substitution effect. And because also the good is normal, and when the price of the good goes down, the real income goes up. So when the real income goes up, you also buy more if the good is normal, and that's why the answer is C, which says this, that when the good is normal and there's a price fall, we buy more of the good, not only because it's relatively cheaper, right, but also because it's we buy more because real income is rising. So C is the right answer. Number 6, it says a government imposes a $10 tax on each unit produced of a product. How will this affect the firm? Well, in this case, I've made this diagram on the right. You can see this, that if this was the average cost before, now there's a $10 rise in average cost. Similarly, marginal cost will go up by $10 too. But the quantity that is being produced isn't really changing. So how will this affect firms? The firm, simply the quantity won't change. The average cost has gone up by $10 and the marginal cost has gone up by $10. Now the new quantity, the new minimum average cost output will be unchanged, because effectively the curves are shifting upward by by the same sort of by the same amount. It's a parallel shift, and that's why the minimum average cost doesn't really change, right? What will be the new profit maximizing output? And the answer is we don't know. For that we need to know the demand curve. Question 7 is about oligopoly. They say, according to the oligopoly theory, what is not likely to characterize the behavior of firms in the industry? Well, we know this in an oligopoly. An oligopoly always match the price fall, but does not match the price rise. And that's why the answer is what is not likely to happen in oligopoly? Matching any price rises made by the rivals. If a rival is increasing the price, you do nothing. If the rival is decreasing the price, you match the price fall. You don't match the price rise. That's why B is the right answer. In question 8, they give us this curve. They say the diagram shows the cost and revenue curves for a monopolist whose only cost of production is a fixed cost. So if your fixed cost is the only cost, this means that you don't have any what you call marginal cost. Why? Because marginal cost is the change in cost when you produce an extra unit. Because the only cost that you have is your fixed cost, this means the marginal cost is zero. If the marginal cost is zero and you're a profit maximizer, then MC is equal to MR, right? When MR is zero, when MC is zero, then MR must also be zero. So in order to maximize profit, you should produce this quantity, which would mean your price should be D. Hence, D is the right answer for this. Number 9 says company R manufactures steel, company S produces ships, company T operates oil tankers, company V operates cruise liners. Which statement is correct? Well, simply if R takes over S, which means a manufacturer of steel take over producer of ship, we call this forward vertical integration, which means you are producing now also producing something where you are also providing an input. Question number 10 says a monopolist chooses an output that maximizes profit and makes normal profits. What must be correct as the output chosen? Well, simply if a monopolist is choosing an output that maximizes profit and also make normal profit, the condition for normal profit is that price must equal ATC, right? But the condition for profit maximization is MC must equal MR, which would mean if price is equal to AR, then simply AR must equal AC, because AR is your price. So that means this is the condition necessary for normal profit for a profit maximizer monopolist. So A is the right answer. In number 11, they say this, that a firm operates in an imperfectly competitive market. The prices of its products are determined by the maximum price each consumer is willing to pay. If you're able to charge the maximum price that each consumer is willing to pay, this means you must be doing what we call first degree price discrimination, where each consumer is charged a different price according to what he or she is willing to pay. And that's why the right answer is C. This is the most profitable form of price discrimination. It is very unlikely to happen because people will not reveal what they're willing to pay. But if you are able to find what people are willing to pay, you will be making a lot of profit. Number 12 says, what is an argument for government policy which allows companies to take over other companies? Well, if government is encouraging one company to take over another company, it could be on the grounds of efficiency. We call it basically economies of scale, so that ultimately consumers end up with a lower price because the cost of producing goes down. And that's why B is the right answer. It encourages companies to act to promote productive efficiency, which means try to produce at the lowest point of the LRAC curve, so that there is less sort of wastages and resources are used properly. Number 13 says the government imposes the maximum price for electricity. Which statement justifies this measures? This measure might be considered valid on economic grounds. Well, a maximum price will result in the price of a good to go down, which means that it will become more affordable for consumers to buy a good, and that's why C is the right answer. It will prevent the monopolistic exploitation of consumers. Consumers will not be exploited because now the price is controlled by the government. Number 14 says the diagram shows the change in the market when the government places the production quota OQT on the quantity of a good that has previously been traded at OQ. So previously consumer surplus was VWX and producer surplus was Z and Y. When you do this, when you put a quota, you're basically restricting quantity like here. So clearly all this sort of region is gone. All this region X plus Z is gone because this output is no longer produced, and that's why which welfare loss results from the government's policy, and the answer is X plus Z. Number 15 says which policy by a government would increase the negative externalities that result from cigarette smoking, and simply the answer is C, a ban on substitutes for cigarettes, because if you're banning the substitutes of cigarettes, then basically you're making people smoke only cigarettes, which means more cigarettes will be smoked, which means more negative externalities from cigarettes will come about, because now people are smoking more cigarettes and less of other substitutes of cigarettes. Number 16 says a teacher currently earns $30,000 but would be willing to continue to do the job provided she earned at least $25,000. She prefers to stay in her teaching job than change her to next best alternative employment as an accountant where she could earn $40,000. Which statement is correct? Well, the statement that is correct is that her economic rent is $5,000, and the reason why this is the right answer is because if your wage is $30,000, then to do this current profession, your next best alternative, which means the lowest amount that you're willing to accept to do this job, is $25,000, which means that anything over and above $25,000 is your economic rent, which is $5,000. Now, why don't we consider this information that she can also earn $40,000? Well, to do this current job, you require $25,000. So this isn't really the opportunity cost of her teaching job. The decision she prefers to stay in the teaching job than to go in another alternative employment. That's why for us the opportunity cost of staying as a teacher is $25,000. So her economic rent is $5,000, which is the difference between $30,000 minus $25,000. In question number 17, what they say is what will increase the power of trade union, allowing it to increase wages without reducing the employment of its members in a particular industry? And the answer is B. If the economy is experiencing rising employment, then what will happen? Since labor is a derived demand, rising employment would mean basically demand for labor will rise. A rise in demand for labor would result in not only wages to rise but also employment to increase, because now the industry needs more of these workers. Number 18 is about productivity. They gave us three things. They gave us number of workers, they gave us average number of hours worked per day, and they gave us total output. So the way I'm going to find productivity would be productivity simply total output divided by number of workers times average number of hours. If you multiply this with this, you get total worker hours spent. So for example, 4 times 8 give you overall 32 hours were spent in this job, but that 32 hours resulted in 320 units of output, which means the productivity would be 10 units produced per worker hours. If I do this same for all the different options, I'll find that which firm's workers have the highest productivity, and the answer would be firm B, because 75 times 5 is 35, 420 divided by 35 would give you 12, which is highest as compared to other options. Number 19 is about economic business cycle. I just want to give you a small explanation. So economic business cycle looks like this. There's a peak period where basically the output is at its highest. Then comes a recession. In a recession, we see falling output. Then comes a trough, which is the lowest point in terms of economic downturn. And then the economy starts to recover, and then there's boom. So in terms of negative output gap where the output is actually falling, you will probably going to see this in recession. Recovery, things start to go towards full employment. Peak, we are at full employment, and trough is probably the where the gap is the maximum. But they're saying by increasing negative output gap is basically in recession. The maximum negative output gap would probably be at trough. In number 20, say which characteristics are typical features of a least developed country. Well, in a least developed country, we would dominantly see a primary sector, agriculture, that is, exports earnings will be definitely unstable, and terms of trade will also be unstable because your exports and imports will be subject to a lot of uncertainty, especially if you are exporting agricultural goods. There could be different changes in prices that can affect your terms of trade. Number 21 says what is central to uh, economic growth but not necessarily to economic development. Well, economic growth can happen directly when there's a rise in GDP, but economic development may include other factors like income distribution, health factors, education, and all that. So, whenever there's an increase in GDP, there is definitely more economic growth, but not necessarily economic development. Number 22 says what would be the essential element in listing countries in order of their standard of living during a particular year. So when you are trying to list countries according to the standard of living, we need to make sure that we use purchasing power parity adjusted exchange rates, and the reason why we do that is because purchasing power parity adjusted exchange rate takes into account relative cost of living. So what would be essential element in listing countries? We need to make sure that we use an exchange rate that is adjusted for the purchasing power parity. Number 23 says the government wished to increase the demand in an economy in an attempt to reduce unemployment. Which policy is most likely to achieve this? And the answer is D, subsidizing the building of new houses. A subsidy on housing can cause the demand for various industries to go up, and that can cause basically unemployment to fall. Uh, this is basically why when the government want to increase demand in economy and reduce unemployment, you may need to have a policy which can make the AD curve shift to the right. C, which says increasing interest of rates would result in AD to fall. Similarly, B would make the AD fall, and A says establishing greater health and safety rules for manufacturers may result in supply side policies to happen, but may not necessarily result in demand to rise. Number 24 says what would an increase in leakages or withdrawals from the circular flow of income. What would be an increase in leakages? Leakages or withdrawals are simply savings plus taxation plus imports, and that's why imports, B is the right answer. Increase in spending on imports of luxury cars are basically leakages. Why is transfer payment not a leakage? Because transfer payment are payments for which no output is produced in return. We normally exclude that from our GDP calculation. What is used to measure the deflationary gap? So little diagram on the right explains us what a deflationary gap is. So if this is what your AE is right now, if this is what the full employment level is, so currently our output is basically here at Y1. So this is what we call a deflationary, this is what we call an output gap, and this AB is what we call deflationary gap. Now how do we go from A0 to A star? And the answer is when we have some injections that takes place. Let's say I go up or G goes up or X goes up, we can go to full employment level, and that's why the increase in injections needed to reach full employment can help us understand what is the level of the deflationary gap. Number 26 says the following data describes an economy's consumption function. What can be deduced about the value of the margin person consume in this economy? And the answer is 0.8. How do we get this? We find out the difference of this. This is 40. This is 122 minus 90 is 32. And the answer would be basically, if you look at this, consistently the number turns out to be 0.8. What is MPC? MPC is simply change in C over change in Y, which is equal to 32 over 40 or 0.8. In which circumstances will there be an immediate increase in money supply? And the answer is A, simply because when the consumer takes advantage of an overdraft facility, basically bank lending is going up. Whenever the bank lending goes up, money supply goes up. Number 28 says that the turning point of the Kuznets curve for income inequality has been estimated to be 10,500. So what is the Kuznets curve? A Kuznets curve basically shows the relationship between GDP per capita and income inequality. And it says is that as GDP goes up, initially income inequality goes up till a certain point, which is this point. Right now, in this case, they're saying that the turning point is 10,500. But after 10,500, you will see that GDP will go up, but the income inequality will go down. So right now, an economy is at $8,000, which would mean it's somewhere here, right? This means that an increase in GDP per capita will increase income inequality. Why? Because you haven't reached the turning point. So the hypothesis of the Kuznets curve is simply that as income go up, income distribution initially worsen till certain point, which is the turning point, and then it starts to improve. Number 29 says which macroeconomic policy are most likely to complement each other, and the answer is high growth and low unemployment, because when the AD rises, not only GDP goes up, but also unemployment goes down. So there is no trade-off when it comes to economic growth and unemployment. Number 30 says this, that all else remaining unchanged, what would result in an outflow of capital funds from a country? And the answer is an increase in foreign interest rates, because interest rate goes up. Basically, interest rate goes up of other countries, hot money will flow out of the country. So there will be an outflow of capital funds, so hot money flows out. Remember, this is interest rates of other countries going up, which means effectively our interest rates are relatively lower. Thank you.